Football is a game of inches. I'm sure that if you follow or play football in any capacity, you've heard that quote before, because if there's one phrase that's passed around most often to describe the slim margin for error in preparation and execution for the sport, that's the one. But especially reaching into college and certainly the NFL, that phrase is applicable to more than just fighting for an extra yard. When the game becomes more mental than anything, it applies to those who are able to lock in better than anybody else, because those who can block out everything but the task at hand tend to be pretty successful, whether that's by an inch or by a mile. And of course, there's plenty to block out, especially if you've got someone lined up across from you that's trained their entire life in what to say to knock you off your game. I recently made a video on just that, about the best trash talkers in NFL history on the defensive side of the ball, and hearing your feedback, a lot of you wanted to see a part 2 for the loudest of all time on offense, so if you haven't seen that part 1, there will be a link on screen now to go watch that and get all caught up. So we've got a lot of characters to get through and maybe steal some insults for use in our own personal life, so before we jump into the list, this video is very likely going to be claimed by the Big Blue Shield, so I'd like to give a huge shout out to Manscaped for making this video happen. Manscaped is the leader in men's grooming both above and below the belt, and this holiday season there's no better gift than a safe, reliable shave where it counts, because cutting corners means cutting away at the fabric of your being, and that's just not a good situation. Fortunately, Manscaped has got you covered, with top-of-the-line shaving equipment and an array of products to keep you at your freshest, even including subscription plans that restock you on all of your favorites. So if you're looking to do yourself or someone you know a favor this year, use my code SET20 at the link below to get 20% off, plus free shipping, plus the Shed travel bag, plus a free pair of boxer briefs, which, I don't know about you, but that sounds like kind of a good deal to me. So head on over to Manscaped in the description below and use code SET20 to let them know who sent you. So without further ado, let's jump straight into some of the best in history to rub salt in a defender's wounds play after play through their whole careers. Like I talked about in the defensive version of this video, it takes a great deal of confidence to play any individual one-on-one position. And just like the defensive backs that line up on them, wide receivers tend to do the most talking of any player on an offense. But while jawing can get yourself a free home in an opponent's mind, you'd better be able to back it all up, unless you want to be considered a complete and utter joke, which is why almost all of the trash talkers we're going to discuss are in the Hall of Fame for their on-field accomplishments as well, which played directly into their ability to knock others down. But for every case of how to trash talk correctly, you can find one that will make you laugh at how in over their head a player was. And the single best case of that, for our purposes, is the legend of Freddie Mitchell, who used his trash talk to dig a grave for his very own career. He was a first-round pick for the Eagles in 2001, but his performance never lived up to that bid. He constantly would throw out blame to the organization and other players for his struggles, all the while anointing himself with nicknames like First Down Freddie, the People's Champ, and Fred X, which, like all self-chosen nicknames, are terrible. But his questionable judgment also led him to do something extremely regrettable just before the only Super Bowl appearance of his career. Going up against the defending champion Patriots, Mitchell decided to diss every member of the Pats secondary by saying he didn't know any of their names, and then proceeded to refer to them by incorrect jersey numbers. He then singled out safety Rodney Harrison, saying he had something special just for him. And I mean, I don't want to spoil Super Bowl 39 for you, but he did not, unless by something special, he meant a single catch for 11 yards. After the game, when talking to the press, Bill Belichick was even quoted saying, "He's terrible. You can print that. I was happy when he was in the game." So with that godsmack, Mitchell was sent sailing off into irrelevance, and that Super Bowl would go down as the very last game of his career. But the only reason that Mitchell really got any time in the spotlight in the first place was an injury to the first of today's Trash Talk Hall of Fame inductees, Terrell Owens, who was not only much better on the field, but by far one of the most entertaining figures to grace the league in its entire 100-year history. Of all the players we're going to discuss, Owens might take the cake as the most controversial among them, never going too long without drumming up another controversy or headline in his 16 seasons. Sideline rants, post-game pressers, and over-the-top celebrations were just an every-week occurrence for teams that employed T.O. on their rosters, and despite all of his antics, the production he stacked up made it worth it more often than not. Owens had one of the most statistically impressive careers of all time at his position, but in spite of that, he'll certainly most be remembered for his other performances, from inciting fights with his celebrations, implying his former quarterback was gay, to flipping one last bird to Hall of Fame voters that left him out 2 straight ballots by skipping his own induction ceremony. There's too many infamous quotes and moments to do justice to, so for the man who knew he was better than his opponents, told them, and then danced in front of their home crowd, I'll just let him take it from here.
All I want to know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready? I love me some meat. Woo! Woo! Give me the ball. No, I'm tired of running. You don't rap or nothing. Yo, I just want to welcome y'all to Mount High Theater, starring no one other than myself.
It's my team. It's my quarterback.
Look, mama, they got these cameras on me again. They got these cameras on me again, mama. Let's go, T.O. Let's go, T.O. Let's go, T.O. Let's go, T.O. Hey, you can get this jersey right here in the pro shop. In the pro shop.
The 2000s were really quite an era for trash-talking and dominant forces at the wide receiver position in general, which lent us gems like the incredible career and many, to quote Joe Buck, disgusting acts of Randy Moss. But in terms of sheer volume and frequency of trash talk on an everyday basis, there's really only 2 other receivers that I'd slot into the same vein as Terrell Owens, and one even played with the man. Chad Johnson, who changed his name to Chad Ochocinco after his own jersey number at the height of his career, was certainly as vocal as they come. Just like Owens, he brought migraine-inducing levels of antics into his career, which was really played more as a game of accumulating numbers than wins, because all that really matters is that he was always open and needed the ball on every play, of course. While wearing his emotions on his sleeve like that got him into trouble, he managed to put together the best career in Bengals history and joined the 10,000-yard club in 13 seasons, but it was the amount of words he could spit out per minute that brought him the most notoriety. He was always placing himself into the spotlight, keeping a checklist of players who were able to guard him well during the 2005 season titled Who Covered 85 in '05, and designed elaborate celebrations for when he reached the end zone, including putting the football, working a shift as a cameraman, and putting on a gold Hall of Fame jacket, which was met with plenty of outrage since he was an active player. But that was the MO for his career: ruffle feathers and then laugh as you continue to succeed and make their blood boil even more. And though he may never join the Pro Football Hall of Fame, there's certainly a bust waiting for him for all of his work on and off the field as one of history's premier trash talkers.
What y'all talking about? Y'all talking about me? They don't want to play no ball, bro. Bro, I can see it in their eyes, bro. I got a great celebration for you guys. Again, just wait and see the next one. Okay.
I was 35.
Man, they all suck, man. Come on, this me. It's me.
I just want to know, I was 35.
Horrible. What you looking at? Huh? What you looking at?
240,000.
I don't care what you are. I know you can't cover. You too pretty. Right there, number 2, you too pretty. Y'all can't be talking about nothing. Double 85, that's it.
If I get in the end zone, make sure you keep the camera on me.
I'm gonna give you your money's worth before I leave today.
I got a trivia question. It's a new year. Same old question. How do you stop 85?
Now, of course, this list wouldn't be near complete without arguably the greatest talker ever at the receiver position, a player not only to be annoyed by, but a player that was legitimately scary with the amount of intensity he carried out onto the field. That man is Steve Smith, who is a prototype for receivers that want to completely demolish the opposition physically and mentally. Nicknamed Mighty Mouth, Smith once said that he came out of the womb trash talking, and with the bite that his one-liners had, I'm sort of inclined to believe him. His 16 seasons in the NFL saw a span of dominance few at his position can match, but his ability to demean and derail opponents was absolutely undefeated. There's been no shortage of defenders who have stood in front of that freight train and taken the hit full force, from Fred Smoot, who Smith affectionately referred to as whatchamacallit, to Janoris Jenkins, who made things personal against Smith in a game where he incinerated Jenkins before telling him to wear more condoms since he had 4 kids by 3 women. It's really just in his nature to come after anyone who even looks at him the wrong way, holding grudges and vendettas throughout his whole career, like when he told the Panthers after they released him that there would be blood and guts everywhere if they met again. And after putting up 7 catches for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns in week 4 of the following season, it was time to break out the mops. But the incident that you likely associate with his trash-talking prowess is easily the most entertaining on the list. In a battle with Aqib Talib while Smith was still with the Panthers, the two were going at it all night, having to be pulled off each other in multiple instances. However, a hip injury caused Talib to leave the game early, opening the door for one of the most famous rants in NFL history.
What happened between you and Talib on the field early in the game?
I don't know, you gonna ask him, cause he didn't finish the game. Ice up, son, ice up.
For Smith, trash talk wasn't just a strategy he used to throw off corners before and after the play. It's part of who he was, loud, outspoken, and arrogant as hell. But when you can back it up like Steve Smith did, you've got every right to sound off.
And I'm Baltimore Raven. What I think of is you go in there, we take your lunchbox, we take your sandwich, we take your juice box, we take your applesauce, and we take your spork and we break it. Hey, you gotta come better than that, Lou. You gotta come better than that, Lou. Hey, you was thinking about tapping out. You was thinking about tapping out. You was thinking about tapping out. Oh, I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you.
Here we go. This is a nail, him in a coffin. You're dead. Take your ass back to Carolina. Make sure you mow my lawn too while you're out there. Keep it clean for me.
So with that, we round out the inductees from the wide receiver position. But don't click off just yet, because there's always a few personalities that go outside of the standard temperament for their position. Some even defy expectations completely and raise eyebrows whenever they go after an opposing player, and I think there's no better representative of that crowd than the absolutely incredible trash talk of Phillip Rivers. As a family man from Decatur, Alabama, who has 9 kids with his junior high sweetheart, there's not too many other candidates you'd place above him in a list of guys you'd think are least likely to trash talk, but you would be so very wrong.
Run! Hey, run! Hey, run! Hey, run! Hey, run! Told ya. Hey, hey! You don't play Mike. Why would you line up there? Y'all put that stinking blitz on tape. Y'all think that's a good blitz? Y'all think that's a good blitz, Rolando? He's going for 90-yard touchdown! 90-yard touchdown!
Hey, 17, you see I ain't talking, right? Stay humble, bro.
But you know he's right
Stay
here.
humble, stay humble, cuz.
I can be excited.
Yeah, but don't do that by my ear. Don't do it by my ear now.
I will do it. No.
Hey,
That's what I do.
It's really just perfect trash talk. It's screechy, it involves words like heck and golly gee, and it's everything that I never knew that I needed. But I will cherish it for as long as he's in the league. Outside of the occasional chirping back and forth though, especially in today's NFL, you don't see too many players outside of the wide receiver ranks talking up a storm. It's just not the way things seem to roll. But back before mic'd ups were all the rage, players built legacies on how angry they made their opponents. And for our last entry into the Trash Talk Hall of Fame, it's a gift that he's evolved into a broadcasting gig alongside one of the most overactive talkers in the business. I'm of course talking about Shannon Sharpe, who has the unique distinction of being an NFL Hall of Famer, 3-time Super Bowl champ, and a Twitter meme, because no matter what capacity he's in, he's just as entertaining as they come. His success on Fox Sports alongside the last remaining Cowboys fan in Skip Bayless follows decades after an incredibly dominant career as one of the best tight ends to ever play the game, posting over 10,000 yards and 62 touchdowns in a 14-year career. Like many players on this list, Sharpe was completely dominant and had to be accounted for on every snap, but rest assured, he'd make his location known regardless. He often told players that they weren't worth their contracts, that they were a waste of cap space and a roster spot every time he made big plays. In a league that's as cutthroat with business as the NFL can be, that kind of disrespect cut pretty deep.
Hey, it's gonna be one of them days.
You the weak link on the linebacker. We gonna take advantage of you.
He was creative, irritating, and very effective, but there's no better measure of that than one particular drive against the Kansas City Chiefs and Derek Thomas, may he rest in peace. But on this drive, everything was on the table for Sharpe, and it took him all of a few moments to completely dismantle Thomas's focus on the final drive of that game. The Broncos were already up 23-7 and were mainly just running the clock out at that point, but that didn't stop KC from racking up 5 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties on a single drive, with 3 of them coming from Derek Thomas. So what was the supposed story for that incredible loss of composure that helped add to the penalty yardage that would account for 75 of 80 of that drive's yards? Well, the way the story goes is that Sharpe knew the phone number of Derek Thomas's girlfriend and recited it number by number each time before the snap. It is a power move among power moves that is both way across the line and also hilarious as hell, and clearly it worked. The Broncos would punch in one last touchdown to ice the game, and they'd waltz all the way through to a Super Bowl win in that same season. Thomas, on the other hand, was suspended by the Chiefs following that game, and Sharpe responded by calling his ability to get a player suspended with just trash talk his finest moment. And in a career full of excellent sound bites, that Monday night game trash talk that never reached a microphone really might be the best of them all.
Yeah, we said it. Whatever they say, we said it. Come on, D. I'm calling the president. President, we need a National Guard. We need as many men as you can spare because we are killing the Patriots. So call the dogs off. Send the National Guard, please. They need emergency help. Please help these folks.
So there we are, part 2 of the greatest trash talkers in NFL history, with 4 more gold jackets for our fictional Hall of Fame. Although, if anybody wants to make it real, I mean, by all means. Trash talking is always going to have a place in the history of the sport, even as the NFL becomes more and more of a gentleman's game with outlooks on things changing across the board. But no matter where the NFL goes, I never want to see that very obvious personal mental battle leave. It's what separates those who know they're great from those who think they're great, and there's nothing better than watching players who are overly cocky be forced to eat a giant spoonful of their own words on live television. So maybe, and hopefully, we'll see some new faces carry the torch of showboating and cockiness into the new generation of the NFL, because it's just too fun to ignore. But until then, no one can take away the incredible moments that we've already got in the history books.